Welcome to the fourth episode of the Numeracy Report. My name is Sandra Tambidurai, or Mrs. T by my students. I'm a teacher, a math coach, a mother of two, and a lifelong learner. To put it simply, this show is the answer to every time I've been asked by a student, what is the point of me learning this? Why should I learn this? So I've decided to find out, and I want to seek out all the different ways that math is used in the real world to help illustrate the possibilities of a strong foundation in math can offer. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Nevicia Case. She is a postdoctoral fellow in the Faculty of Law at the University of Alberta. Her research maps and analyzes regulatory policies and frameworks for clinical translation and market authorization of regenerative medicine products and therapy. Dr. Case is originally trained as a cognitive scientist, having obtained her Doctor of Philosophy in Psychiatry from McGill University in 2022, and her Master of Science in Medical Science from the University of Calgary in 2015, with a focus on stroke neurology. She completed her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology at the University of Calgary in 2013. So, listeners, let's welcome Dr. Nevicia Case. So, Dr. Case, you're a Doctor of Philosophy in Psychiatry. You've obtained your Master of Science in Medical Sciences. And you're one young world scholar. You are the definition of a lifelong learner. And you've been what's been amazing is that you are using that knowledge to help aid in your passion to impact human health. So I'm really excited to talk to you and to have you on my show.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah. So, when we spoke earlier, you talked about being led by curiosity. I love that because I think that's the way all education and progress should be. So I wanted to ask you, how did Matt play a role in pursuing your curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think curiosity is such an important starting point that really drives and motivates us towards finding answers and developing solutions to problems. And from a scientific perspective, there's always a problem that we want to solve or a gap in knowledge that we want to address. And like just answering those questions, it's a lot easier to do that from a place of curiosity. And so I've really used statistics as a tool that has kind of guided how I approach those questions and answering them. And it's helped to keep me engaged with the statistics as well, because being completely honest, it's not exactly the most exciting for me. But when I'm able to connect it to the curiosity of wanting to find the answer to a particular question or solve a problem in my field, that's where I find the utility and the excitement of statistics.
That's awesome. Did you, can you tell me about your journey with math? Did you know growing up and, statistics specifically, did you know that it would play such a role in your interests?
Yeah, I did not. So while I was doing my bachelor's in psychology, statistics was one of those required courses that everyone just hated. No one wanted to take that course. But thankfully I had a professor who knew that. And so she did her best to make statistics as engaging and interesting as possible for us as students. And she did a really great job of that. And so I'm really thankful for that. But then once I got to more advanced level statistics during my master's, that's where it started to become a bit dry again, and it disconnected from why we're learning the statistics.
Right.
and that disconnect really, it impacted my performance quite a bit.
Mm.
So I actually remember this one time I'd done really poorly on a test
Mm-hmm.
in that class, and I remember going to my professor's office to ask, why I'd done so poorly, if he could
Yeah.
maybe explain some of the questions that I'd gotten wrong. And it was so bad, to the point where I actually remember crying in his office,
Oh,
because he was explaining to me, the correct way to do the problem, and
yeah.
I was just not understanding. I was not
Right.
getting it at all.
Right.
And so it impacted my grades in that course a lot, and my confidence in doing statistics as well.
Right.
And so it just had a really negative overall impact on my
Mm.
view of statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then once I got to the point of starting my PhD, the statistics was like really required again, and they were like just really hammering, and you need to do this statistics course and everything. So I ended up taking a couple of advanced statistics courses, and outside of the department of statistics, these were like the most advanced statistics courses that the university really offered.
Right.
So I was terrified going into this, of course, knowing my previous experience. But in this case, the professor was able to kind of reconnect it with that curiosity, and they just had like a very inquisitive approach to it, and connected it to the actual research questions and problems that we're wanting to solve. And through doing statistics in those courses, I was able to reconnect with some of that curiosity, and I passed those courses like with A's, and it was just a completely night and
Different.
day experience from the previous course that I'd taken. So, and I actually went on to do even more advanced statistics than the ones learned in those courses for my PhD
Yeah.
research.
Wow, that's awesome. Because, that's important to showcase to kids and to teachers, how just because somebody is not doing well in a certain course doesn't define that person. And how do we engage the student to become interested in it and make it relevant for the student, so that they find the interest to study it. And once you have that interest, then and that it pertains to what you want to do in your life, then it makes a lot more sense to you, and you understand it and you perform well. So that's amazing. I'm so glad you share that with me, Dr. Case. And I think students and teachers who listen to this, it will really help knowing about your experience. And I say this to my students all the time, but it's different coming from me as a teacher, and they're like, okay, you say that to everybody.
Right.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But it is important. And I love that, because it's important to impart that kind of confidence in a child, and to help that child find, their self-esteem back, not based on a particular performance. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that experience.
Yeah, my
I,
pleasure. And that having that confidence and self-esteem is super, super important for it as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. It translates the confidence translates to the performance, and
Mhm.
so and self-esteem translates to performance. So
Exactly.
it's yeah, I love it. And are you able to, if possible, give some examples of how you use statistics in your work, so listeners can understand that?
Yeah, for sure. So my own curiosity around like sciences has largely been focused on mental health and neurology. And so we're typically answering questions like, how can we identify symptoms of diseases or disorders earlier or with
Mm.
better accuracy, so that patients can seek treatments before their condition progresses further. And then other questions are like, how can we diagnose with greater accuracy and avoid misdiagnosis as well? And how can we even prevent diseases altogether?
Mhm.
And so finding solutions to those problems is not only saving a lot of money in healthcare expenditure, but it's also making life easier for patients and then also their families and communities. And so um, so for like the examples that I've used in my own work, I've used, for example, looking at using statistics to look at the likelihood of patients to be in a particular group, for example. So, so in one study that I conducted, we found that patients who had a lower speed of processing information and poor memory recall and verbal fluency and specific type of lesions in their brain tissue were more likely to have a neurological condition called cerebral amyloid angiopathy, as opposed to other neurological conditions like Alzheimer's disease or stroke. And so we were able to have that typology and diagnose them more accurately thanks to the statistics that we have available. And so that used just a very simple statistical analysis called a t-test to compare the cognitive symptoms between types of patients. But then I've also used some more advanced statistics as well, including some more complex forms of regression analyses to predict whether depressed mood and alcohol use predicts greater risky driving in a certain population of people who have committed a driving while impaired offense previously. And so in both of these cases, the statistics was used as a tool to answer very important questions. And it allowed for more accurate diagnosis and for better prediction of potentially dangerous drivers as well.
That's amazing because I teach these things to kids. So I'm like, no, I can show proof as to why they're learning this, t-tests and regression, all this stuff. I love hearing this, and I love sharing this to students and teachers who can use that. And we had also talked about how you didn't realize how much statistics would be used in the social sciences, right? As opposed to, the hard, so-called harder sciences. And I think that is, it's something that's really important for people to know, and students to know that, people who are interested in social sciences, this is really useful for them. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that, if possible?
Yeah, for sure. I would say generally, the more complexity you have with the systems that you're dealing with, and the less control you have over those variables, is the more statistics that you're going to need in order to come to certain conclusions. So, so for example, like if you're dealing with more basic sciences like lab work or cellular biology, for example, you're more often going to encounter very simple statistics like t-tests that might help to identify different types of cells maybe. Because in this setting, the scientists, they have a lot of control over what variables they have control over, and like how the cells are cultured, for example. But as we move up in the complexity of the organisms that we're dealing with into, say, animal sciences, even here, we're still able to control a lot of like the animal's genetics, their environment in which they're raised, and even to a certain extent, their behaviors as well, and their socialization. And so the statistics here are still fairly simple. But then the moment you move to areas like psychology or sociology or even public health, suddenly you're dealing with human systems that are far more complex and very difficult to control.
Right.
And so I mean, historically, there have been some terrible scientific practices that were done during times like the Holocaust and slavery,
Mm.
but thankfully those practices aren't considered ethical anymore. And so in lieu of that, we have statistics to help us better account for those variables that we're not able to control, like the environment that the person is in. And things like that. So yeah, so the statistics actually plays an even bigger role in the social
Wow.
sciences. And it's a lot more advanced and complex than my friends who deal with more basic sciences have to deal with at all.
Yeah, see that I did not know until I spoke to you. I maybe sort of, like, obviously you need statistics for this, but I did not know that you need a lot of complex statistics for the social sciences. And I don't know if students going through the school systems know, if you're interested in psychology, and if you're interested in sociology and all those subjects, that statistics play a big role in that,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
it's and it's important for, I feel like, students to kind of have a passion and a goal, and also figure out, okay, what are the tools that I need to um that's going to aid me in this process, and not
Hmm.
instead of just focusing on like getting an A in this course. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
so I think this conversation is really useful for students to help them see the relevance of statistics, especially if they're interested in the social sciences. Amazing.
Hmm.
Awesome. So, I what is one advice you would perhaps offer to a current math student who is interested in, in your career?
Right. So I would say just start off with that curiosity, and really dig into that and identify what problem it is that you're interested in solving.
Mm,
And don't lose sight of that, because that's what will keep you going, even through topics that you may or may not necessarily enjoy. Even if that is the case, just be realistic about it. But if you're really driven by that curiosity, then suddenly that doesn't matter as much, because you're more concerned about finding the solution to a particular problem, and that's going to override maybe any negative or uncertain feelings that you might have about statistics. And just stay connected with that. And it's also something that's useful, not just in a professional context, but understanding
mhm.
statistics is also useful for example, like critically analyzing information that you see in the media, for example, as well. So
Yes.
it's important for just being a functioning and well-informed adult in society.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I really couldn't. And as I'm having more and more conversations, I mean, I always knew statistics is important. That is my field of study, and that is so I really knew that. But as I'm talking to people in various industries, it's just very clear to me the the place that it plays in, different industries. And every time this is
Mhm.
statistics, that's what I hear all the time. So it is I love to hear that from you, and it's great that listeners are hearing it from, uh, people such as you, who is passionate about, impacting humanity, and
Mhm.
in that pursuit of lifelong learning. So uh
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm grateful that you're on this show, pretty much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on it. It's a great and really important topic to discuss. Yeah, especially just navigating just general media information, as I mentioned as well,
Right.
and knowing the difference between a study that's been thoroughly and really well conducted with,
Mhm.
a strong sample size and very rigorous methods and everything, versus having a study that's really poorly done, or maybe anecdotal evidence, or
Right, right.
something that's based on a case study, for example. Or
Mhm.
so it's good to have that framework to work
Definitely.
with as you navigate.
Yeah, and understanding probability that, and the results from a study, how much can you trust it? And, based on the way the study was conducted, like you mentioned, and
Mhm.
understanding that statistics is doesn't they're not saying it's an absolute truth.
Right.
It's based on probability, and which will give you an idea about how strongly you can infer, a correlation or causation depending on what kind of study you did, so
Exactly.
yeah. So I always like to wrap up the show with by asking, is there something you would like to say to a math teacher or professor that you've had that who has made an impact, on your life/career?
Yeah, I would definitely say my first statistics professor in undergraduate psychology made the biggest difference because of how she presented statistics with enthusiasm and passion, and just really wanting to connect the students with something greater than the numbers in front of them. So I'm really grateful for that, and that really made an impact on how I ultimately ended up viewing and using statistics in the end.
Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, it's somebody who took their passion and showed that passion to you instead of just taking it as a job, and that made an impact. And I'm grateful for her because her influence helped you, have the confidence that you need, to make all these important conclusions that is helping you right now in your career, so
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this was an incredible conversation, and I wish, we could keep going because we have a great rapport also. And
Yeah.
yeah, but unfortunately, it's all the time that we have for this episode of the Numeracy Report. So Dr. Case, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you continued success in your journey and your, vision to improve human health.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. If you know anyone who is passionate about the way math, statistics, etc. is used in their work, whether it's yourself or someone else please reach out to me. Details are on my website, numeracycoach.com. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe. And if you know anyone who could benefit from listening to this, please share with them. Until next time, adios.